Hello, hello, hello. This is Talking Manchester United, a United Stand podcast with myself, Paul Gardner. And joining me as always is Ash Burns. Ash, how are you, my friend?
Not bad at all, mate. Yeah, the sun's been out, got a bit of a tan, 2 wins on the board. It's pretty good. How about yourself?
Yeah, can't complain. The weather has been nice, hasn't it?
Lovely. Very nice.
And just as I'm sure most of you will already be aware if you've seen our tweet earlier today, we do have a guest with us today. It's That's Football presenter, Sander Segers. How are you, my friend?
Oh, I am wonderful. I'm a bit groggy though, lads. Hay fever's set in a little bit for me, but I'm good. I'm happy to be on the podcast. It's good to be speaking to you guys.
And you're joining us from Madrid. That's right, isn't it?
Oh, very tropical. I am continental. I'm all around the world, pal.
So we're here boasting about sunshine, and you're sat there thinking, "Yeah, I get this every day, mate."
Yeah, mate, every day. It's an everyday occurrence, son, for me.
Well, for the benefit of the listeners, today we will be talking about the FA Cup victory over Spurs. Probably won't speak too much about Bournemouth because that's irrelevant now, isn't it? We will take your tweet, and I say that in the singular because we've only had one tweet this week. Totally my fault. I put the tweet out far too late. But yeah, so I think it's Michael Stow. We will read out your tweet, my friend.
I think Andrew said something as well, if I'm not mistaken.
Was he?
We might have.
But when we get to that stage, you can do a bit of digging around and have a look. And I think Sanders said to make some stuff up as well. So we might even make some stuff up. Let's see what happens.
All good.
Yeah, and then also we'll look ahead to the Arsenal game as well. So let's get started then, gents. So we beat Bournemouth 2-0. I think, for me at least, I'll come to you guys in a second, but for me at least, that was a game, and Jose's already touched on this as well, and it very much looked like it. It was a game that took everything back to basics. So we just come off the back of a defeat, a horrible defeat against West Brom. Jose said, we tried making everything a bit too complicated. I think last week's podcast was actually entitled Masters of Complication. But it just seemed like the Bournemouth game was just brought back down to, grassroots level in terms of, teaching how to pass. Nothing too special. It was it wasn't an exciting game. No one was particularly poor. It's very simple, straightforward, 2-0 victory. I'll come to you first, Sander, because you are our guest. What were your thoughts on that Bournemouth game?
It wasn't a spectacular performance, was it? At the end of the day, for me, it was just about bouncing back and getting a bit of momentum back. It was a horrendous game that West Brom won. So for me, for the likes of Pogba, Rashford, Martial, give them some minutes, get a bit of confidence back, and just get ready for the game after that.
Yeah, and it was sort of what's the word? Like audition, really, wasn't it, for the semi-final game against Spurs? Ash, what are your thoughts on the Bournemouth game?
Yeah, I'm glad you touched upon. I'm glad you used that term as well, back to basics, because for me, it was very much that sort of game. It was a very basic game. And as you both touched upon, I didn't think there was anything special in the game. I don't think anyone really shone. There was a few decent individual performances, but I just thought we did everything very simple. I thought, we transitioned okay through the midfield and attack, something that we've struggled with a lot this season. I thought our defence at times was far too static, and Bournemouth got at us at quite a few times where we shouldn't have been even close to being under threat. And that could be down to personnel and maybe a bit of rust as well in some of the inclusions that were in the squad. But yeah, nothing too special. A routine, decent win. I'm glad we got that second goal, because at 1-0, Bournemouth looked like they were pressing and everything. So it was a good couple of substitutions from Jose to bring Lukaku on and get him get him on the ball and get him running in behind. So yeah, nice and comfortable, and it really did set us up perfectly for Spurs. No one went too overboard. No one tired themselves or burnt themselves out, and yeah, a couple of players put in some decent performances. So yeah, happy days.
And we also seen Chris Smalling score his third goal in 3 games. There we go. We got a backup striker if ever we need one. Yeah. So if we fast forward slightly then to Saturday just gone, 2-1 victory over Spurs. Great first half, I thought. End-to-end football. Both teams having good spells. Quite an evenly matched first half, I would say. What are your overall thoughts on the game, Sander?
Well, first 10 minutes, I think we were poor. I think, obviously, that showed in the goal that they scored. I think our defence, in general, I don't have any trust in that defence. Young at left back for their goal, for me, was all over the place. I know he was pushing up with Trippier, but you can't vacate your left back position like that. Pogba was then forced to cover, and obviously, didn't have the defensive discipline, to do so successfully. Valencia, Smalling, Jones, for me, it's just not. I don't have any confidence in it. Not only on the ball but positionally, one-on-one. I didn't rate the defense, but going forward, that midfield, I think. Well, I don't know, but I think it's our best midfield by far. Matic, Herrera, and Pogba. The dynamics in that work fantastically. Matic is going to sit back, take the ball.
Do you think that the...
Go
on, sorry. I thought you might have cut out a bit then. I thought you stopped. Continue.
Oh, right. No, so what I was going to say was that, the dynamics of that midfield work brilliantly in Matic, Herrera, and Pogba. I think, Matic is there to sit in, take the ball off the defence and play it forward. Herrera, well, he's our sort of Kante, isn't he? He's a busy man. He's pressuring. And Pogba, you give him the freedom to create and he bloody well will do so.
Absolutely. Just coming back to the Ashley Young comment, especially for their goal. I did see quite a few people giving him a bit of stick for that. And I'm thinking, well, hang on a minute. Now, I could be completely wrong in saying this, but when you look at our fullbacks, what's the one thing we always moan that they don't do enough of? Get forward. Get forward down that wing. And you touched on Kieran Trippier. There was a point in that first half when one of their centre-backs had the ball and Kieran Trippier was actually in our half, right up against Ashley Young. And I'm thinking, see, that's what our fullback should be doing when we got but they're not. If Smalling's got the ball or Jones has got the ball, Ashley Young and Valencia are pretty much level with them, maybe a yard or two in front. You want them a bit further up. So when we were on that attack, was it a corner they broke from? Or was it just, or did they just win possession? It doesn't matter. The fact is that Ashley Young was getting forward, and that's what we wanted. Now, when they hit on the counter attack, and that ball from Sanchez, that was wonderful. I think that was it was the same time, wasn't it? Sanchez over the top to Ericsson. That ball was fantastic. Not many players are making that pass. 9 times out of 10, Young gets away with that. But I don't blame Young for being where he was. He was in an advanced position because we were on the attack. That is what we want. That ball over the top was just a fantastic ball. So I think people were being a little bit harsh on Young. Now, I'm not saying that Young had a good game because I think my overall rating for Young was 5 out of 10 at the whole game. I do think he did struggle. But I think it was too easy to pick fault with him on that particular goal. What are your thoughts on that, Ash? And then, Sandra, come back to you after. Obviously, you want to reply to that, but let's get Ash involved quickly.
Well, I'm actually, regrettably, because I don't like doing this, but I'm actually right in the middle of you both. Well, that could come across wrong, but no. But what I think is is at fault somewhat because although we want them to push high, I think he was maybe a little bit too high. But as you rightly said, Paul, I don't think he can, take the brunt of the blame because what should happen in that situation if Young is pushing up that high? What should happen if the attack's coming down that side is Young and Smalling. And Valencia all shift across. So maybe Phil Jones is playing left back, Smalling centre back, along with Valencia. And then the right sided midfielder or the right sided attacker drops back into that right back. Everyone shuffles over. It's basic football. It's basic defence. That didn't happen. As you said, Pogba had to track back, and it's far too easy. So I do blame Young for a little bit, but again, as you rightly said, he's pushing high, he's trying to take the game, and I think that's one thing that we did do as the game wore on, is we pressed high, just like Young did, and it worked a lot better.
So like I said, that ball from Sanchez, that he pulls that off one time in 10.
But again, he was part of a very good and a very technically gifted Ajax team that were known for doing that, and that is one thing that maybe we could have taken into account because. We know that back line from Tottenham are very, very good with the ball at their feet, unlike ours. You look at the likes of Vertonghen, Alderweireld, you look at Sanchez, they're all very good with the ball at their feet and can pick a pass. So that doesn't surprise me that he did that. It surprised me that the way we handled it and the way we defended it, I think was just so poor. And it was so basic. All it required was a one-man shuffle across the back line, and it takes most of the sting out of that pass. So that was frustrating for me. But I sort of blame both parties. That's where I stand anyway.
You got anything to add on that then, Sander?
Well, I'd sort of agree with Ash, actually. The main thing there is communication. Yeah. And we've been saying it for a long time, but we lack true leaders on the field. Yeah. And so, okay, it's fine if Ashley, Young wants to go up and the team can organise around that, but there was a lack of communication. And if he is going to go and do that, the defence needs to be aware of that and cover him so he can do so. So for me, I'd agree with you guys both. I think it's good that we've come to a diplomatic decision. I just think the main thing is leadership and communication is where we lacked in, I think.
Yeah,
absolutely. No, I totally agree with that. Now let's talk about the fact that it was another victory against a top 6 rival. I know it's in the FA Cup, it's not in the league, but they are still a top 6 rival.
Yeah.
Is this against some of Mourinho's critics? If you consider the record we had against top 6 in the first half of the season, it wasn't looking great. But in the second half of the season, we sort of turned that round quite considerably. Now, we all know the media love to moan at Mourinho or criticise him or attack him whenever they can. Well, this result, not only with it being against top 6 rival, but also a semi-final of an FA Cup, one of the most coveted tournaments in the world football, is that going to get? Are we going to start seeing critics quietening down slightly, or are they just going to find other reasons? What do you reckon, Ash?
Good God, no! They're going to find every reason they can. I'd love to turn around and say, yeah, do you know what? It'll answer critics, but no. I've seen reports today and after the game and after the FA Cup and all sorts that are sort of aimed at United. So I don't think I'd like to think that it would silence some of the critics, but not for me. I think United will always be in the news for more so the negative reasons than positive ones, just because that's what get clicks. United fans click on it to see why they're slagging us off, and all the rival fans love clicking on it as well to see what they've said about us and what we've done wrong and how we've caused drama in the footballing world this time. So I'd like to think that it would, but no, not for me. I'm still thinking they're going to pick faults. They'll always pick faults in anything that we do, and that's just being Manchester United here, I think.
Especially if we go and lose against Arsenal.
Exactly, yeah.
What are your thoughts on that, Sander?
Oh, I think it should shut up the critics, mate.
Shouldn't it? It really should.
It's ridiculous how people, you might, okay, the only reason I see is potentially a style of play, but for me, well, I'm Jose in. I'm not sure where you guys stand on that, but for me, look, he's beaten Liverpool, he's beaten City, he's beaten Chelsea, he's beaten Spurs twice. Well, we're second in the league, final of the FA Cup. Yeah, the Champions League was disappointing, but it's progression, isn't it? The media, like Ash said, they'll always moan the tossers. I don't know if I can say that. They're just a bunch of tossers. They're just a bunch of tossers. Like, they're just always going to moan. They've got an agenda. Not only do they hate United because of our sustained, long period of success, but they hate Mourinho as well. They've got their new love puppies in Klopp and, Pep Guardiola. So it won't stop them. But we're Man United, hated, adored, never ignored.
Exactly. Great finish on that statement. Let's talk about Sanchez and Herrera's performances in that game, because as you touched on, Sander, just a moment ago, that midfield dynamic was absolutely incredible with Herrera in there. A real box-to-box machine. First of all, that Sanchez header, how good was the technique on that header, Ash?
Yeah, it's him in a nutshell, isn't it? He's just quality. I said before we signed him that I've said for a good couple of years that I'd love to have him at United, and he's struggled a bit. A lot of people calling him a flop, and we discussed this after a tweet last week. And I always say he's always looking to add things to the team, and when he gets in those sort of positions, he'll always make things happen. And it was great to see him given a little bit of freedom, and he's even spoke about the comments and what he spoke about with Mourinho, that Mourinho has said that he's got freedom to roam and do what he likes, essentially. So it was great to see him popping up on the right for the goal. A lot is made of Pogba and Sanchez getting in each other's way. It certainly didn't for that first goal, did it? Absolutely cracking header. I think the header's great, but the work from Pogba beforehand is just as good. To get Dembele, who do you see in the Premier League muscle Dembele off the ball that easily? So I thought that was fantastic. The ball in was immaculate, and that header, 5'7", in the mix amongst Davinson Sanchez and Vertonghen, and to put it back across the keeper it is superb. I thought the keeper he went a little bit early to his left. He could have done better, but I'm not complaining one bit. Yeah, great header and a great goal.
Yeah, I think he said after the game, correct me if I'm wrong, but he was originally going to go near post.
Yeah.
But when he's seen in the last minute, he sort of seen the keeper's positioning and decided to go far post. So we had to sort of like in midair just change the way he was going to head the ball. So instead of like getting his head around it and putting some power on it and putting it in the bottom near corner, he just sort of cushioned it instead. It's brilliant to watch. I did not think it was going in. I thought it was just going to bounce in front of the keeper, and the keeper was going to pick it up quite simply. When I seen it go in, I thought, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Sander, what your thoughts on that?
I mean, all I've got to say is sit down, Musa. No, it's sit down, Dembele.
Yeah.
People were talking. Mark was bantering on about he's going to boss our midfield. Sit down, Mark. Sit down, Musa. Pogba absolutely bossed him to shrug him off the ball. And that cross that Pogba put in was absolutely sublime. It was in between the two centre backs, and it was inch perfect for me. Sanchez, smallest man on the pitch, easy as you like, back in the net, and sit down, Musa.
Ander Herrera, then, he's not featured hugely so far this season. I don't know if you'll remember, Ash, but after last season's Player of the Year season for Ander Herrera, I did say, didn't I, at the end of the season, that despite that, and despite the fact that everyone loves him and how good he was, he wouldn't be a first-team regular this season. And I was basically basing that on the fact that we would play 4-2-3-1 regularly, which we have up until recently, and the fact that I knew we would bring in someone else, and we did. We brought in Matic, so it's kind of obvious it was going to be Matic and Herrera. So I could foresee that happening. But what a resurgence from him there. He's come in, he's been called upon. His attitude has been absolutely phenomenal through the season. Never heard him complain. He's always there cheering along on the subs bench, on the touchlines. What a performance that was to come in and do that. For me, it was a 9 out of 10 performance, man of the match performance. Sander, what are your thoughts?
I'm the same as you, mate. I gave him man of the match. For me, I back Jose 100%, but I think it's criminal that it's taken us, or Jose, so long to realise how good that midfield is. We saw it last season. I tweeted it out. Carrick, Herrera and Pogba, I said, was the best midfield in the Premier League. It's got everything in it. And obviously Carrick's getting on a bit. So we brought in Matic. And so for me, just switch Carrick for Matic and you're good to go. But yeah, I agree with you, mate. He's fantastic. Did the dirty work, bossed it around, and got a goal to reward him for it. So yeah, like I said, for me, that's got to be. I don't see it next season progressing. I'm happy with this midfield. I really am. Unless you can bring in someone of Herrera's mould, which I'm not sure who, but better, I'm happy with this midfield.
Well, that brings me on to my next question then. I was going to put it to Ash, but I'll put it straight to you first. Based on that performance, he was good against Bournemouth as well. Let's not brush over that fact. But based on that performance, should he remain? I mean, this is a no-brainer. He should remain in the three midfield for the rest of this season. But do you think he'll be here next year? And do you think he should be? And do you think he should be in the midfield three? I think you pretty much just answered the question just a moment ago, but if you want to elaborate on it, feel free.
Just to answer three to make it very clear for everyone. I think he'll be here next year. He should be here next year, and I'm happy with him in the midfield. I haven't got anything to go off that to prove that it's a bad midfield. We saw him start against Seville in that second leg, I think it was, and if he didn't get injured, I think we would have done a lot better. He started off very, very well, so. Every time he's played, he's done absolutely fantastic. Last season, Player of the Year. This season, not played much, not down to anything of his own fault, but Mourinho's just not played him. And every time he has played this season, he's done fantastically well. So, yeah, Herrera, Matic and Pogba, start the season with that. I'll be happy.
Ash?
Now, this is an interesting one for me. I'll just jump back to the first question because I was very intrigued. And I said a lot about the midfield and with Spurs and us and how we'd line up and, how it would pan out. And I watched Herrera a lot, almost exclusively for large parts of that Spurs game. And for me, it's his best performance in a United shirt by a long way. I know a lot is made of the Chelsea game where he pocketed Hazard for 90 minutes or whatever. But for me, it's his best performance in a United shirt. Literally every attack, every transition through midfield that Spurs had, if it was even a yard off, a stray pass from Spurs, it landed at Herrera's feet. His composure in our final third, in the defence, was absolutely immaculate. Going forward, he was brilliant. And the second goal. Do you remember that really awkward header that he did back to De Gea, which no one even thought of doing? Do you remember that? I think there was
like a looping header, wasn't it?
Yeah, and it was perfect. Just completely killed the attack for Spurs. And put us back in the game. Well, there was from that header to his goal was 26 seconds.
Unreal.
Yeah, and I've been reading a lot and looking at bits. Yeah, 26 seconds or something like that between that header and his goal. So it just defines that box to box. You know what we've been. I don't want to say what we've been missing, because we know he's capable of it. And to go into the second question, would I have him starting next season? I'd be happy with Herrera next season. I do think we need to improve in the midfield, and for me, as harsh as it sounds, I'd be looking at replacing Matic instead of Herrera. As good as I think Matic is, and as well as he's done, I think he can be a little bit too static and can dawdle on the ball a little bit too much, which is not great for us in the bigger games. And I think we need someone with bite. And as you two have said, we need a leader. We need someone, you know, with a little bit of aggressiveness in midfield and who's not afraid of a tackle and who's going to put themselves about. So I'd be happy with Herrera to give us that little bit of class, that little bit of tempo in midfield. And I'd be looking at replacing Matic. If we do go into the next season with those three, I won't be too upset, but we definitely need reinforcements in that midfield. So yeah, I'd be perfectly happy with him in that midfield if we play the same system and if we look at the same style of football as we're playing now.
One thing is for sure, he will be a very difficult player to replace if we are going to replace him.
Yeah.
Just going back to that header, back to De Gea, like you said, there's very, very, very few players, midfielders, defenders even, that would have thought of doing that.
Yeah.
Most of them would have headed it out in maybe into danger. And the fact that he'd done that, he probably already knew in his head that by doing that, gives everybody a chance to get forward.
Yeah.
When the goalkeeper's got it, there's not really much Spurs can do about that. Whereas if he would have headed it out, you know, it's anyone's ball. But in his head, he knows, give it back to the keeper. Everyone's got a chance to get forward and create an attack. And like you say, he played a part in that attack and eventually got the goal. It's that kind of football intelligence that's very hard to come by. Now, as Sander quite rightly said as well, it's criminal that it's taken Mourinho this long, because we know that Mourinho is fully aware of his intelligence. If you remember back to that game, I forget who it was against. I think it might have been, I'm pretty sure it was last season. It would have been last season. It was a cup game, I think. It might have been in the Europa League when we had a free kick, I think it was. Might have even been a corner.
Yeah.
And he was sort of on the edge of the box or in the box, and Mkhitaryan was behind.
Yeah.
And he running out and said, "No, Mkhitaryan, you go in there." And Mkhitaryan ended up scoring. And Mourinho, it might have been the final. It could well have been the final. But Mourinho even said after the game, you know, he praised Herrera for that, and he acknowledged that Herrera had a very good football brain. And that's the sort of thing that's very hard to come by. It might not be, but when you look at the squad that we've got at the moment, there aren't really that many good footballing brains on the pitch at the moment, especially when you look at our defence.
I think
go on.
I was reading an article before, actually. It was I actually put it out before. Not a glowing review of Mr. Garth Crooks, but he did say, he does the team of the week and all this, nonsense. And he said that Ander Herrera is the most irritating player in the Premier League. And I looked at that and I thought, well, do you know what? He, in that sense, he's got a point, because teams must hate playing against him, because he is almost in that Sergio Busquets mold. He's a little bit sly. Opposition teams must absolutely hate him. But he completely gets the club. He loves it. He'll do anything to win. And then following on that, reading that article, I thought, he's going to give a bit of a glowing review there. But just after that performance, as I said, it goes back to that media. I use the term agenda very loosely, but again, he literally, all he did was slate Herrera. He didn't really compliment him, and it was some harsh words from the human gargoyle, Garth Crooks. So yeah, I was a little bit peeved at that, but but it does show that he is making waves, and as long as it's positive and as long as he's doing the biz for the team, I'm completely happy with what he's doing.
Now, I do think that it's like I said, it's a no-brainer. He should be in that midfield three, along with Matic and Pogba for the remainder of this season. Obviously, I do think that. I strongly believe that. With regards to next season, I'm going to say exactly the same thing as I said at the end of last season. Come next season, he won't be a first-team regular. I do think that Mourinho will bring in another midfielder who's got more ability going forward. Because when you think of Herrera and you think of him on the edge of the box having a shot, You know, if you're playing down against Yeovil, it's probably going to, well, actually, no, if it's against Yeovil, he's going to score. We know that. But 9 times out of 10, the ball's in row Z.
Yeah.
You know, he's not got a great goal scoring record in that sense. And when you're playing in a 4-3-3 as part of the attacking two, because that is sort of what we do really in the 4-3-3. We've got your one that holds, and you've got the other two that are sort of, one of them's a box to box, and the other one sort of Pogba being the one that sort of is mainly the one that goes forward. And I just think that we will bring in someone who's got more of a goal threat about them. Somebody who's got passing range. We know Herrera's got a fantastic passing range. We've seen it several times, and that's the reason we bought him. But I don't think we see that side of him often enough. So I do think that Mourinho will bring someone in. Maybe not. Well, no, if he's going to bring it in, it'll be bringing him in this summer. So that's what I think on the Herrera situation anyway. I was going to mention our fullbacks, that we kind of already have spoken about them. All I was going to say really is that against Spurs, I thought that of all games this season, that was the game where it really stood out. Because as we've already pointed out, Ashley Young did struggle on that left-hand side. And Valencia, well, he came off because he was knackered, basically, cramping up and all sorts. I mean, he has played a lot of games this season, but that's what you expect from a back four. The back four is usually the most consistent part of your team. When you're making substitutions in a game, usually it's attackers or midfielders that you're making subs with. Your defenders are usually quite solid and quite consistent all the way through the season. So let's move forward. I do want to speak about one of the defenders, and that's Phil Jones.
Yeah.
I'll come to you first, Sandos. It feels like you haven't spoken for a little while.
Hello, good evening, mate.
He's fallen asleep.
Phil Jones gets a lot of stick. But when he's been called upon so far this season, I think maybe outstanding is going a little bit over the top, but I think he's been very good. And I thought he had a very good game against Spurs, made one or two very important tackles. People will argue that if he was a good defender, he shouldn't have had to make those tackles in the first place. But I think that's a ridiculous argument, because sometimes it might not be always be his fault that he's got to make those tackles. And in this case, it wasn't. What are your thoughts on Jones? Is he a keeper or a seller?
Well, he's a defender, mate.
We got a funny man. We've got a funny man.
No, I think that for me is difficult with Jonesy, because Jonesy, as if we're mates. Jones.
Well, you might be.
Jesus, yeah. Well, for me, it's like when he plays, he's good. Although against Spurs, there were once or twice that Harry Kane did drift off against him. I remember one bit, most notably when Harry Kane was at the back post and Phil Jones just stepped in and Harry Kane was free at the back post. I don't know if you guys remember that.
Oh, yes.
But you do make a good point that he made some fantastic last-ditch tackles. And like you said, that argument that, if he's a good defender, he doesn't have to make those. Well, no, that's just stop. Like, he's a good defender and he's good at, he did that well. But for me, with Phil Jones, you can't rely on him, can you? I mean, we all know it. You can never have him. You can never go into a season thinking, right, Jones and let's say Bailly are going to be our partnership, because he just doesn't stay fit. He can't stay fit. He's got great talent. Fergie said that he, could potentially be the next Duncan Edwards. I think that was going a bit far. I'll be honest. I think it was going a bit far. But regardless, he's a good player, but you just can't rely on him. He can't stay fit. So it's a shame. But for me, get rid. If you can't put a good run of games together, there's no point of being at United. We're just paying your wages for you to sit in the what's it called, on the bench. So yeah.
That's fair point. And personally, I do think he will be sold. However, I would like us to retain him. Not as a first choice centre back, definitely not. But if one of our centre backs gets injured or suspended or needs a bit of rest, I think he would be an ideal candidate to step in, for 90 minutes. If it's against a team where they're not a big threat, like a bottom half team. He would be an ideal person to come in, because you can see on his face he loves the club. I know that's not an excuse to keep him, but when he does play, he does make some important tackles. And I do like the guy.
For me, so sorry to cut you off there, but I just want to say, like for me, a backup player has to be someone that you can. He's always there just in case you need him, right? I take it. My par is that Phil Jones is injured. No, I mean, you can never rely on him. For me, I'd rather like to see Jones leave, and then Smalling used as that sort of backup player, and a new centre back brought in maybe alongside Bay. Obviously, we know that Bay can't stay fit either, But, I'd like to have Smalling as that backup defender and a couple new centre-backs brought in to start for me.
Yeah, I do think, like I said, I do think Jones will be sold. But if he wasn't and he was kept as backup, I would be happy with that. Usually, before he gets injured, he can put in a string of 2, 3, 4, sometimes even 5 or 6 games. Do you know what I mean? And if he's used as a backup, he's never going to play that many in a row.
Yeah.
So the risk of injury will probably drop quite considerably.
Yeah.
Ash, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I thought Phil Jones had a very good game against Spurs. I'm glad you mentioned that instance with Kane, Sander, and you said, "Do you remember?" Oh, yes, I remember.
I mentioned a lot of things, aren't you?
Yeah, because I think it was on 2 occasions. The first one for the goal, where the first goal where we just went missing, and then the second directly after that goal. I think it was only about a couple of minutes afterwards, and I watched Phil Jones, and I've watched the replay probably about 10 or 15 times. That when Son has got the ball on the left wing, he cuts back in on his right foot. If you watch Phil Jones, if you ever see the clip again, you'll see him look at Harry Kane no less than about 7 times. I'm not joking. He's just giving him little peeks again, he looks again, and then all of a sudden he just, as you rightly said, he stepped forward and just completely forgot about him. It was like it was a goldfish moment for him, and he just completely forgot, let him drift off, and then as the ball comes over, he turns round, and you saw the look of shock on Phil Jones's face, as if to say, "What's Harry Kane doing there?" But I think apart from that, I thought he was superb. And those last-ditch tackles, there was one at the front post when the ball was whipped across. I think he tackled, he got sort of around Ali and tackled it. For me, that's not his fault. That's Smalling's fault. He should be covering that front post, and I thought Jones did exceptionally well to get to that. And for me...
But that's their job, isn't it, as centre-backs, to have that chemistry. If one of them's slightly out of position, the other one's there to cover. So that's great play.
Chemistry is, I think, a bit of a stretch for Phil Jones and Chris Smalling, but yeah, I know what you mean. But for me, I'm with Paul. Paul knows my feelings on Chris Smalling. As good as he's done, and as much as I'm warming to Chris Smalling, and I really am, not in terms of his footballing ability, but in terms of his character and his mentality, and he has got a little bit of banter in him. Like he said after the game in Bournemouth, making a late run for the Golden Boot. I like the guy in terms of that, but he just can't play football for me. Every time I see him on the ball, I'm just dreading what he's going to do with it. And I do think Phil Jones usually puts in a very decent performance, and he's one of those that, yes, he'll throw himself about and he'll get injured, but as you said, he'll do anything he can to help the team. And he usually gets caught out less than Chris Smalling, and can at least run through and bring the ball out of defence a little bit better. So for me, I'd probably keep him nowhere near the starting 11. But as you said, if anyone gets injured or we need to give players a rest, I keep him for that. But Smalling out and Jones in for me.
So we know that Pogba and Sanchez. Then let's go back to these 2 guys. So we know that before the Bournemouth game, both of them were basically told by Mourinho, keep it simple. He's not expecting goals every game. He's not expecting man of the match performances every game. What he's expecting is them to not drop below a certain level. Get the basics right, and then your talent will come through, and that's fine. That's the gist of what Mourinho said to both of them, as we've seen in the media. So we spoke about Sanchez. Let's talk a little bit about Pogba then. Bournemouth, for the whole team, it was like we've said, back to basics, and I thought that Pogba in that game did just that. He wasn't rubbish. He didn't do anything spectacular, but he kept it simple. He kept the ball moving. In your opinion then, Sander, was it yet another step up again for Pogba against Spurs? It's a no-brainer, really, isn't it? What were your thoughts on Pogba's performance against Spurs?
Well, I think he was brilliant. Did exactly what he had to do. Created a goal. Which obviously, led to us equalising against Spurs. And for me, it wasn't a man of the match. Hence why we didn't give him man of the match. But he did very well. Created when he had to. Was very, very strong. And for me, what Pogba does so well is he's so strong and quick that he can bring the ball from the Matic area to the opposition's box so easily and so quickly. And I think he did that a few times, shrugged a few players off and ran with it. So for me, fantastic player. But like you said, he just needs to keep it more simple.
Ash?
Yeah, I thought he did well. Against Bournemouth, I thought he was maybe in the top 3 performers on the pitch for me. Again, didn't really sparkle, didn't do anything in particular, particularly special, but he did get the assist. He showed drive and determination late on. Brilliant run and pass for Lukaku to get the goal, which also took him to the top of the leaderboards in terms of away assists this season. No other player in the Premier League has had more assists in away matches than Pogba this season, with 7. So that was an interesting stat that I happened to come across before. So that's an interesting one. And, he gets an assist against Bournemouth. He gets an assist against Spurs. I thought his performance against Spurs was very good. I don't think it was exceptional. But I thought it was very good. He showed good strength. He showed, I think, his mentality shone through as well. He was keen to pick the ball up in the final third as the game wore on against Spurs. A couple of pot shots. And as you said, I think it's a really good point that you make, Paul. He seems to be keeping it a lot more simple. And I'm hoping this is almost his Ronaldo moment that Ronaldo had at United. When he came, he was very flashy, very a lot of step overs and whatnot. And as soon as he simplified his game, he really grew into the team. And I'm hoping that's what Pogba's going to do now. Keep it nice and simple, move the ball quicker, and just bring everything together. And he seems he's done that in the last couple of games. And yeah, it only bodes well for him going forward for the rest of the season.
And hopefully this will be another area of criticism from the media that we'll see dampened down slightly, because obviously for a little while Pogba and Sanchez just weren't performing. The media and fans as well, especially the Mourinho out crowd, because they also like to find any excuse to slate him. And to be fair, most of them were Mourinho out before he even started. Some of them you can sort of be like, okay, fair enough, you're consistent at least. But a lot of people were saying, he's a bad coach. He's got 2 world-class players. He can't get the best out of them. And it seems like that. Well, he's done the opposite of that, really, hasn't he? He's had a chat with them. He's told them what he expects from them, which, to be fair, he's sort of reassuring what he's saying to them. Look, I don't expect you to be man of the match every game. He's sort of telling them, just do what you do. Keep it simple. And now we're starting to see an improvement from them. I suppose you could probably say that with more sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? I don't know. I guess you could be more sure about that after the Arsenal game. Yeah. Conviction. You can say it with more conviction, I suppose, after the Arsenal game. If they perform well against Arsenal, then maybe you can sort of say Mourinho's done a fantastic job with them. Another reason to shut some of the haters up.
Yeah.
So to round off the Spurs review, then passing through them, we've got to Chelsea in the final. Just very quickly, whoever jumps in first. Are we confident of winning the cup final against Chelsea? Sander?
Very much so, mate. I don't want to say we've won it, but I think Mourinho, you said very quickly, but I think Mourinho, he's going to school Conte again. They've been poor this season, Chelsea. And I'm sort of happy we got Chelsea in the final, because it's going to make it more of a final, isn't it? Yeah, less guarantee of necessarily winning it, because obviously they're tougher opposition than Southampton. But I think it's very much doable, and I'm excited for it.
Absolutely. And if Pogba and Sanchez can continue this upward trajectory of form, I like that word, don't I? I say that quite a lot. If they can continue on that upward curve, then I think that will be a fantastic final. I'm quietly confident that we'll win that final. How about you, Ash?
Yeah, I'm not as quietly. I'm quite a little bit more confident that we're going to win it. And in a way, it was spot on what you said, Sander. Sander, in terms of that, it is going to make it more of a final. But for me, I think the way Mourinho is going to approach this game is what is going to benefit us. In terms of having Chelsea over Southampton. I think against Southampton, it's one of those teams that we can never really be sure of. What Southampton is going to turn up. How are we going to set up for us? But I think with the likes of Chelsea, it's almost going to be like the Spurs game that's just passed. Mourinho knows he's in for a tough game, but I think these sorts of games he thrives in, the big games where he's under pressure, all eyes are on him, they're expecting him to fail, and he just brings it through. And it adds to even more that it's his old team. So I think he's going to be well up for it. The players are going to be well up for it. And I'm actually quite confident that we can get the win. As long as we keep everyone fit, I'm confident we're gonna lift the cup.
Excellent. That's good. I'm glad of the confidence that we're all showing here.
I said we'd beat Spurs.
You did. I wasn't sure, was I? To be honest, I thought we were going to get beat, but I'm happy. I'm happy that we're through to the final.
The first thing I said, and people can quote me on this, was before that, about 10 minutes before that game, I said, I hope to God that Spurs score early. And that's literally what I said, because I knew if they scored early that we'd actually pick it up then. So, yeah, I'm glad that happened.
Okay, well, should we take it over to Twitter then and see if we've got more than one reply?
Yes, we have. We've got two.
We got two.
Yeah, we got two. So yeah, we'll go to Claude
we
first.
We get about 7 or 8, sometimes more. So it's very rare that we only get 1 or 2. But again, that's my fault for putting the tweet out too late.
No, that's all good. So we'll get Claude. We'll discuss Claude's tweet first. So Claude Arensde. Discuss the chances of Griezmann possibly still coming to United without dismissing it because the number 7 isn't available. A boyhood dream shouldn't be forgotten just because you can't have your favourite number unless he's an obsessive compulsive arithmomaniac. Okay. So go to Sander first then. Do you think he's going to go? What do you reckon?
Nah, I don't think so. I think, I don't think it's all on that number 7, but I think United are, we don't get messed around, and he sort of messed us around and led us on a bit last summer, and we've got enough players there anyway. We've got Sanchez, Martial, obviously Lukaku up front. Griezmann likes to play there at times as well. Juan Mata. If he's going to get rid of a few, I'm not sure, but what I am sure of is that Mourinho came out and said today that, we're going to strengthen in some positions, but there is a lot of youth as well that he wants to develop. So I think we're going to develop more in the defensive areas, maybe a couple in the midfield and defence as well. But up front, I'm not sure we'll bring any in, if I'm honest. So the answer from me shortly is no. I don't think he's coming.
Okay, Paul?
Yeah, I think I'm the same as well. I think that ship sailed, hit an iceberg and sunk, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Well, to be honest, I hope it has, because as you rightly said, Sandy, he did mess us about. He showed some loyalty to Atletico when they got the transfer ban and everything. But again, I'm sorry, you had your chance. And,
it's not like the transfer ban came to Atletico just willy nilly. They obviously did something wrong. You know what I mean? It wasn't like it was, it's so unfortunate that my club have got the transfer ban. No, they've somehow fiddled about not with anyway. So he showed loyalty to a bunch of cheaters essentially. So anyway, moving on.
Yeah, and Mr. Southwick then, the man with the beard, Andrew.
Andy.
He says, in your guys' opinion, why do you think we haven't seen the Bailly and Lindelof partnership on the pitch yet? Good question, Andrew. Paul.
That is a good one, because I've been saying for a while. Yeah, Andrew, I didn't see you pop up in the. Must be 3 tweets then. Fair play. So I've been saying for the last few weeks that I would like to see Bailly and Lindelof in a partnership. And it baffles me that we haven't seen that, because I thought the reason that he brought those two in was because he envisioned them as being our centre-back partnership. They still might be yet. We don't know. But with Bailly unable to stay fit, it remains to be seen if he is going to be a main part of our team going forward. But it's difficult to say why, because if I knew why, if I had an inkling as to why, I wouldn't keep saying I want to see them play together. So honestly, I don't know. I honestly don't know.
Sander?
All right, Ashley. Anyway, I think Bailly obviously can't stay fit. So, I mean, that answers your question. But with Lindelof, he's still young. He's still a young player. He's come from the Portuguese league. Obviously, it's a massive step up in pace, physicality, etc. So I don't have a problem with Lindelof doing what he's done this season. He's settling in. He made a few mistakes. He's getting adjusted. And hopefully, if Bailly can stay fit, we'll see that centre-back partnership thrive more next season than it has done this one.
Yeah, I'd like to think so, because I think they complement each other perfectly. Bailly is an absolute maniac.
Oh, yeah.
Loves throwing it. And the Iceman, as he is known, Lindelof, is great on the ball, composed. And again, me and Paula spoke a lot about this, and we've sort of likened it to almost some similarities of Vidic and Ferdinand. One's an absolute bruiser and one's very composed. And I think that works really well. Hoping to see that next season. And then finally, which I'm going to pull rank with, and I'm actually going to discuss this one first because it's something that I've discussed a lot over the last couple of days and the last week or so. Michael Stow, I understand the club over player, but we can't seriously think selling Martial is a good idea, can we? And this is something that me and Paul speak about on a weekly basis now. And I'd like to address, because I've come under a little bit of stick recently, even though my stance on Martial has not changed. I absolutely love the kid. I think he's got bags of talent, bags of potential. And Paul knows that how much I defended him early on in the season when he was performing and when he was in fantastic form. However, of late, his form has dropped and he's not performed. And the one thing I'd like to say is, so is selling Martial a good idea? For me, no. I do not want to see him leave the club. I think he's a cracking player. I think he's got, as I mentioned, bags of potential. However, if we do sell him, and then, for a decent amount of money, and then Jose brings in a natural winger who's going to fit this system better, and who's going to be more consistent, then am I going to, is it going to be the end of the world and am I going to be Jose out? Definitely not. And I think this is where a lot of the fan base is split at the moment, between people who actually support Manchester United and your Martial FC as they've, sort of been known as a collective very recently. So I don't think we should sell Martial. I still think he's got a place at the club. I still like the kid. It's completely up to him. There's a lot of talk with big clubs, discussing, but if he leaves, he leaves. And as I said last week, the week before, we've sold better players before him and we'll sell better players after him. And as much as I love the kid, if he wants to go, there's plenty of replacements out there. So over to you guys, whoever wants it first. That was my 2 pence on the matter.
Go for it, Sam.
All right, I'll take it. Well, Ash, you said that his form has dropped off as of late. Yes, because he's only been playing 20 minutes here and there. We saw up to January, I think it was, he got 3 Player of the Month. It's not a coincidence when you play a player more regularly and get a run of games together. You're going to start to pick up a bit of momentum. He's a fantastic player with fantastic potential. And I saw a Photoshop of him in a Bayern Munich kit. Yeah, I'll be honest, I had to get the bucket because I felt physically sick. No, I really did. And if we let him go, like you, Ash, I won't go Jose out because we've appointed the manager, and so he's now the boss. And if he wants to do that, then he does that. But I'd strongly disagree with it, as not only, like I said, he's a fantastic player, but that's what this club's all about, isn't it? Developing young talent. And yeah, he might not have that fighter attitude, but there's nothing wrong with that. Just put her arm around his shoulder and nurture him. He's got, he can be anything he wants to be. And if we were to let him go, it would be criminal. But I would not go Jose out.
Before you jump in, Paul, I know you're dying to. I'd like to. I'm really glad that you brought that up, Sander. In terms of, you said he hasn't been playing a lot recently. He's been, coming off the bench and making cameos. However, for me, at the very start of the season, there was a lot of outcry for him not playing as many games. And Rashford was starting over him at the start of the season, if I am correct. I'm sure that was this season.
I know what you're going about.
Do you know what I mean? And he was coming off the bench in cameos, and near enough every single game he was making an impact. He was either assisting or scoring a goal. And Paul will know, because he knows how much I kicked off about this. I said, if he's doing that, if he's coming off the bench and he's making an impact, he's scoring goals, he's assisting, he should be starting. And I made a massive case for Martial earlier on in the season. And I said he should be starting, he should be contributing more, and he should be given a chance. He hasn't replicated that, and I think he should be given, a bit more time. But for me, of late, I just don't think his end product has really dropped off. He can do all the fancy runs down the wing, and it's just when it comes to that final ball, he just doesn't look as sharp as he did earlier on in the season. And for me, that's the only reason where my mentality has flipped a little bit, because I don't know if it's him mentally. Has he given up? Has he already made his mind up and he's going to go, or whatever it is? But for me, if don't get me wrong, if he was still coming off the bench now, contributing to the team, making assists, scoring goals, I'd still be saying, do you know what, it's wrong. As you said with Herrera, it's criminal. He should be in the team. But at this point in time, I'm having Lingard and Sanchez over him every game. Paul.
So Ash, my feelings on Martial. Everybody who's listening knows.
You don't rate him, do you, Paul? You don't think
listen to this, right? But basically, I don't dislike him. I don't think he's a poor footballer. He's got potential, I would agree. Now, you can throw all these stats around. At the beginning of the season, he got X amount of assists, he got X amount of goals. He created, he didn't create hardly anything, and I'll come on to that in a minute. when he was having this impact, as you quite rightly said, Ash, it was last 10, 15 minutes of the game when the defense was tired. You know, he had quite an not easy, but easier, let's say, run at the defense. They were tired and he was fresh. And that's the whole point of the substitution, let's be honest. And he did, despite what anyone says, start a handful of games as well. And it became a trend. And pundits would say this after games as well. It's there for everyone to see that whenever he started a game, he was non-effective. Yet when he came on as a sub, he was. And that was where he came from, coming on as a sub. Because when he started a game, he never made an impact. He struggled. And it was the United Stand. I don't know if it was Mark that put the tweet out, but it was on the main United Stand account earlier on in the season. I think around January it might have been. And it said, he's got same amount of goals or same amount of assists as Hazard. He's got one more goal than Hazard. And I think Sanchez at that point. They were all very close in their stats for goals and assists, but I think Martial just edged one of them out slightly. And then I thought, well, okay, well, that's fair enough, right? But what I seem to remember every time I watch him, for me, he was always the most frustrating player on the pitch. And I remember, if you remember one game, Ash, in particular, we did a podcast, and I said when he scored, I didn't celebrate. Because for 90 minutes, no, I didn't. For 90 minutes, it was that one on the edge of the box, and the ball came across, and he just belted it into the top corner, right? Because for 90 minutes, he pissed me off. Because every time he touched the ball, he lost it. He ran to the byline and ended up kicking out for a goal kick because he couldn't control the ball. Right? And it was like that every game. 90 minutes of frustration, then does one good thing, and it's a goal or an assist.
And that's where I backed him,
right?
Didn't I?
Right? Yeah. No, but listen, right? And then when I seen that stat, I thought, well, hang on a minute. Looking at goals and assists, yes, of course, that's important for a striker or for an attacking midfielder. The goals mainly, you look at that for an attacker. But when you look at an attacking midfielder, it's not just goals and assists for an attacking midfielder. It's their ability to create chances for the players around them, especially for the striker. Then when you go and look at his stats for creating chances against the likes of Sanchez and Hazard, he's not even half as good as them. And I think that was Mourinho's biggest problem with him, is the fact that, yeah, he might pop up with the odd goal now and again, but for the rest of the 90 minutes, he was rubbish. He creates very little.
Chaps, is there a sorry to just quickly interject, and I'm sure we'll move on from Martial in a minute, but I think it's an interesting point to make that I'm not sure. I'm posing this to you guys. Is there a shout that potentially he's getting played out of position, and that maybe his best position is up front? He was brought in.
You've woken the beast in Paul now.
No, 100% not. We've seen him play as a number 9.
Calm down, Paul. Calm.
We've seen him play as a number 9 a few times for Man United. And whenever he has, where does he end up drifting out to? He drifts out to the left. It's his natural position. It's where he played from Monaco. The left side of the front three is his position.
I think
that's where when he has been effective, that's position he's been in.
This is where I justify what I was saying and sort of tie it all together, if you will. That
if you want to talk about a player being played out of position, it's Rashford. He's a 9.
Yeah, that's true.
When he broke through, all his goals came from the penalty spot.
Yeah, it's true.
Or the 6-yard box. He was that man. He was always in the box. He would start, on the edge of the box, and then he would run into that space when the ball was played in and score. Look at that brace against Arsenal, both goals.
Yeah.
Then the brace in the next game, both goals from a number 9 position.
True.
That's where he's most dangerous.
Anyway. I just want to tie it together, which I'm really glad you said that, because when we talked about Martial and he frustrated the shit out of us playing 90 minutes of poor football, and then he'd pop up at the end of a game with a goal or an assist. This is where me and Paul sort of split paths for a little bit, because Paul was saying that it frustrated the hell out of him. And I said, although it frustrated me, if he was popping up with those goals and assists, I didn't care. If he was contributing to the team, I'd be happy enough to let him in there. But for me, this is why my mentality has flipped of late, is because recently, whether it be starting, we started the game against Bournemouth, did nothing. He's been, little cameos here and there, and he's not brought that threat. He's not brought the goals. He's not brought the assists. So this is where my mentality has flipped and said, well, do you know what? He's not producing. And this is where my tolerance levels have dropped with him a little bit. Not to say that, I don't rate him or I want him at the club or nothing like that, but And this is where I can justify, and I'm not kicking off with Mourinho picking the likes of Sanchez and Lingard over him, because it's completely justified in my opinion. And until he starts finding that form again, I think the way we're playing at the moment, it has to continue, because like you said, Rashford does get played out of position as well. Although I will add, against Bournemouth, he played at 9 for how long, and then Lukaku comes on and scores a goal. Someone who actually doesn't want to drop wide or drop deep. He ran the line and scored that fantastic goal from a Pogba assist, which you need to see more of Rashford doing, and Martial. But yeah, for me, my tolerance levels have dropped a little bit with Martial, and I think he needs to bring it back, whether it be played in a different position or whatever it may be, or show a bit of patience. But yeah, that's where I stand, and sort of hopefully bring the Martial debate nicely to a close.
That was poetic, Ashley.
Should close it there.
Nice,
unless Sander, you've got something to add.
Yeah, go on.
Yeah, I think, no, I'm joking. Guys, move on.
No, seriously, you've got something to add. Add it.
No, I was actually joking. I don't actually have anything to say. I thought you were talking about it there, though.
Right. Well, we will move on to the preview. Sander, we will drop you out here because we have gone on over an hour already. So me and Ash are going to fly through this preview. But it's been an absolute pleasure having you on. If you're up for it, we'll get you on again soon.
Yeah. I was born ready for talking Manchester United. I really was. I've been a frequent listener to the podcast. So whenever you guys want me on, I'm here for you. Not in that way though, Ashley. Don't get your ideas up. So
come on.
Cheers though, and I'll speak to you all soon.
Yeah, it's been a pleasure. I mean, you did message me months and months ago saying you wanted to come on. You've had a lot of people asking, so we're slowly working our way through them one at a time. But did you want to give out your Twitter details, promote That's Football, whatever you
guys do? Follow, subscribe That's Football on YouTube. It's a generic football fan channel, so I presume you will support Manchester United, but still head over there and subscribe. And also my Twitter is Sander_Segers7 or Sander.
No, Sander, remember Sander.
Sander_Segers7. So anyway, it's been a pleasure being on here, and if you want to get me back on, then just drop me a line, pal.
Yeah, we'll do it.
Cheers, Jack.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Sander. Cheers.
Speak to you soon.
Cheers,
Ash, then, preview.
Marvellous. Over to Arsenal then. Old Trafford, Sunday, 4:30 kickoff. It's always interesting, I think, when Arsenal come to town, isn't it? One of the best rivalries, I think, the Premier League has ever seen. I think a lot of it's going to be overshadowed by the fact that Arsene Wenger has announced that he is leaving the club after 20 or 22 years or whatever it is. But I think it shouldn't detract from the fact that it is Arsenal at the end of the day. I think it is going to be a tough game. I'm fairly confident that we can get the win. We can provide a good show for the fans, and we can get the win. But you've only got to look at Arsenal's recent form to see where they're at and how they're going to approach the game. Last game, 4-1 at West Ham, quite a comfortable win. The first game after the Wenger announcement, which you usually see something like that, anything with the manager and the squad does pick up. 2-1 loss to Newcastle. I don't think we can say anything about that after our performance against Newcastle. 2-2 draw at CSKA, 3-2 win over Southampton, and then a 4-1 win at CSKA as well. So they're coming in fairly decent form. I think their front line is slowly clicking. They've got some decent players. How do you think they're going to roll into town, Paul? Do you think it's going to be a tough one, or do you think it's going to be fairly comfortable for us?
It's not going to be comfortable for us at all. They're going to come into this game. The players will be debriefed, especially the new boys, about the Ferguson, Wenger, Arsenal United rivalry of the late 90s, early noughties. They'll be reminded of that, particularly because of the occasion, because of Wenger announcing his retirement. This will be his last game against us, I believe. Yeah, it will be. So I think they're going to come into this game well up for it. If Mkhitaryan plays, he's going to have a point to prove, and knowing him, he'll put in the game of his life. There's other players which we'll come to shortly, but as you mentioned, their form, they're scoring plenty of goals. Go back to the beginning of the month: 3 against Stoke, 4 against CSKA, another 3 against Southampton, two again against CSKA. Yeah, okay, they had an anomaly where they lost to Newcastle, but then went and put 4 past West Ham. So their goal scoring form is good. And as you may have noticed there as well, there was only 1 clean sheet, so they're not susceptible to. They are susceptible to conceding a goal or two. Yeah. So it could make for a very interesting game. And that's how I see it going. I think it'll be quite a fiery match. I kind of hope it is.
Yeah.
I think we'll see some goals, and I think it could be a good one.
Yeah, I'd love to see it. I'd love to see sort of almost Arsenal United game of the early noughties, as you said. I'd love to see, a couple of flare-ups, some decent goals, some great football. It'd be great for the whole occasion, and hopefully come out, at the end of it with a win. I'm glad you mentioned their goal scoring form, because they are putting goals past opponents. As you rightly said, we know what Arsenal's defense has been like.
That's credit to Wenger as well, because you think when he sold Sanchez, they've had to change the whole system.
Yeah.
The way that they attack, and I think he's done that very well.
Yeah, so looking at the system and the players, I've got 5, as we usually do. I usually put 5 players down. I probably could have put a little bit more, because there's different positions I think that will pose as different problems. But the 5 I've put down is Lacazette. I think he's finding a little bit of form. He's put a couple of goals away in recent weeks. Aubameyang. All depends on who they play and if they play both of them or not. But we know how good he is and how fantastic he was for Dortmund, and the pace he's got against our back line, I think, could be dangerous. Mesut Ozil, obviously we know all about him. We know how much quality he carries and how well he can pick apart defenders if he makes fitness. I think he's been ill over the last sort of week or so, and he missed the West Ham game. I think they're hoping to have him back in time for midweek game against Atletico. Obviously, I've got to put in there Henrik Mkhitaryan, because it's always typical of a player coming back to their old club that they want to do well, they want to prove a point. So I think he could be one to watch out for. And surprisingly, 5th on the list, I've put Danny Welbeck down for a couple of reasons really. First and foremost, I think he is finding a little bit of a purple patch. He scored in the last couple of games. And again, as I mentioned with Mickey, he's scored against us before in an Arsenal shirt. He's going to be up for the occasion, coming back to Old Trafford. Another point to prove. So I think the 5 of them, I'm sure you've probably got a few different ones as well. But they're the 5 I've picked. Any additional ones, same ones?
Do you know I've got 8 players listed here?
Yeah, I was looking at doing that, but I only picked 5.
Obviously, you got your forwards, your Lacazette and your Aubameyang. They're quick. Lacazette's their top scorer, 13 goals. I know 13 is not a lot, but he has scored a few recently. Aubameyang, we know what sort of danger he can pose. They play with a 4-3-3 now. They used to play with one lone striker with Sanchez and Ozil behind them.
Yeah.
And then behind them, 3 in midfield. I think it's like a 4-3-2-1 or a 3-4-2-1 or something like that. That was what they used to play. When we played against them earlier in the season, when we beat them 3-1, to sort of counteract that sort of front 3 triangle they had, we played a 3-5-2.
Yeah.
So we had 3 centre backs, and then we had a couple of holding defenders in front, holding midfielders in front to keep it really tight in the middle, which I think is where we managed to squeeze them out. Although they did still manage to get through and have about 50 million shots.
Yeah,
that was how we approached the game.
Yeah.
They now play a 4-3-3, and it's working for them. They're scoring lots of goals. So I think we'll stick with a 4-3-3 as well. We'll come to that in a moment. But I've gone with Aubameyang, Lacazette, Welbeck, Iwobi even, and Mkhitaryan, because Iwobi, although he's not fantastic, he's only scored 2 goals, but he links up well with the players.
Yeah.
He can create. So I've got those guys in there, as well as obviously your Mesut Ozil. We know all about him. Granit Xhaka has got a handful of assists this season. We know when he's on his game, he can be quite a danger as well. Aaron Ramsey. I don't need to say much about these players because we all know them. We all know the qualities they possess. But all those players I've listed, basically midfielders and attackers, and I think they do pose a threat. As we just said, they're scoring goals for fun recently.
Yeah.
So yeah, those are the players that I've gone with.
Yeah, and I think it'll be interesting. I think coming into this,
and that includes Mkhitaryan as well.
Yeah. I think it'll be interesting. Especially if they do line up with a 4-3-3, and I think knowing Mourinho, he usually will try and match a system and a formation. So I think we could very well see 4-3-3. And I think for me, you look at their midfield, and as you rightly said, they've been putting goals past opponents and whatnot. But I think in terms of midfield, I think they're not the biggest in stature, and I think we can really impose, our will on them in midfield. If we get the likes of Matic and Pogba, the only thing could be a little bit concerning is the sort of intricacies of their passing. I think as long as we keep it tight, and as long as we don't allow them too much space and time on the ball, I'm fairly confident we can dominate them in midfield. And I think, again, as I mentioned with the Spurs game at the weekend, I think that's where the game could be won for us. So, looking, where we're going to approach the game, maybe a 4-3-3 or however, how have you got us lining up for the Arsenal game?
Pretty much identical to Spurs.
Yeah.
I think the back four at the moment is picking itself. I think it's going to be the same as the starting back four that was against Spurs because, well, as we know, Bailly's injured. Lindelof doesn't seem to be playing. I think Jones did a good job against Spurs, so I think he's done himself a favour in keeping this spot there.
Yeah.
Smalling, we know, is going to be there. Valencia and Young, one of those might change. It depends how Valencia is come that game because he did go off looking a bit worse for wear, but I think he probably would have recovered by then. And I think you could probably trust Valencia a bit more than you can Darmian.
Yeah.
Although I wouldn't be upset to see Darmian starting, if I'm honest with you. But I think it'll be Valencia. So I've gone Young, Jones. That's the back four that I would trust of the players that are available.
Yeah.
Midfield three, again, Matic, Pogba, Herrera picks itself.
Yeah.
Especially after Herrera's performance in the last couple of games. If he can continue that form into Arsenal, I think he can be absolutely pivotal for us. And then the front three, Sanchez, Lukaku, and I've gone with Mata again. I quite like Mata out there on that right-hand side. Although Lingard can make a lot of runs, when he's got the ball at his feet, he can't really run at defenders on that right-hand side. He's more suited to a central position, I think. But Mata, when he picks the ball up, I know he's not very good at running at players, but I think he can do more with the ball than Lingard can. So I would like to see Mata given a run out there because he will put a shift in, by 110%.
Yeah, very similar, almost identical. I think, obviously De Gea, that back four picks itself, doesn't it? Valencia, Smalling, Jones and Young. The only thing is if Valencia doesn't overcome his injury, it's looking likely that Darmian will get the shout. But I'd really like to see Lindelof, putting it right back. He can play there. I think he's a lot more physical than Darmian. He's better on the ball. Maybe a little bit of nerves, a little bit of rust there, but I think he can do a fantastic job. Midfield picks itself, as you said, Matic, Herrera and Pogba, and then Sanchez, Lukaku, and I've gone with Lingard again. And the reason I went with Lingard because I think he's done really, really well of late off the ball. And we say this all the time, and he is starting to get the plaudits that he deserves. Off the ball, I think he's one of the best in the Premier League. You look at the game against Bournemouth. I think his run and that absolutely superb pass from Herrera just completely split the Bournemouth defence. I think he was half decent in the Spurs game, and I think with someone like Arsenal, you look at their back line, they are fragile. They do concede a lot of goals, and I think someone like Lingard, could pull that defense, and you know how much of a nuisance he can be when he's running off defenders and he's pulling defenses, and I think that could be a massive asset with the likes of Sanchez and Pogba in behind, finding space and finding each other. So I wouldn't be upset if Mata started, but I'd like to see Lingard just for his intelligence and his runs off the ball. I think with the defences as vulnerable as Arsenal's is, it could be a massive sort of a massive up for us.
Fair enough.
And that's it.
Score predictions?
You want to go first or do you want me to go first?
I'll go first.
Whatever.
I'm going to go 1-1.
Oh, okay.
I do think it'll be a fiery game, and I think that 2-2.
Oh, okay.
I'm going to go 2-2, I think it'll be a draw. I think it'll be 2-2.
Yeah. I'm going to go with 3-1.
Okay.
I really don't see us dropping points in this game. This is going to come back and bite me so bad, but I think with the performance against, it could be a case of we put in two fantastic performances. It's got shades of us beating City and then going to lose to West Brom, isn't it? But I think with the form that we're in, as long as he keeps the same system, and I think Mourinho will still have that head on that he had against Spurs, that it's a formidable opponent coming up, and I think he'll want to keep it tight and he'll know the occasion, and he'll set the players out in a certain way. So I can't see us dropping points, to be honest. And I'll go with 3-1. Sanchez to score.
Well, that'd be nice.
That'd be good.
As long as Mkhitaryan doesn't score their one.
Yeah, that's fine.
Or Welbeck.
Yeah.
Well, I hope for a 3-1. I do think there'll be goals. I think it'll be 2-2. I think we'll wrap it up there then, Ash, unless there's anything else you want to add.
No, I think that is pretty much everything covered. Let's hope for another win. I think another win, does that guarantee us top four, I think, if we win this game?
I don't know. I haven't done the maths.
I think it pretty much guarantees us top 4 because Arsenal, what are they? They're like 17 points behind us in 6th. Just thought in 6th. I just thought I'd get that out there, being the stick that we had last season. 6th, that was, again, for those of you who are sort of hard of hearing. So, yeah. Marvellous. That's it.
Okay, so do you want to give out your Twitter details?
Yeah, it's at Ashboyo, ASHBOYO, as usual with the spelling. Yeah, again, any predictions, any comments you got regarding the podcast, chuck them over. And, yeah, more than happy to discuss.
Excellent. Yeah, you can follow myself as well. It's at Paul Gardiner LP. Follow the podcast Twitter account as well, at United Stand Pod. That's the account that the tweet will go out every week for you to reply to and get your comments into us to be read out and discussed. We are also now on YouTube. So if you're new to the YouTube, just search Talking Manchester United podcast in YouTube or United Stand podcast in YouTube, and you should find us. Subscribe and get involved as well. Speak to us, leave us some comments or tweets. What do you think of our analysis of the Spurs game? Do you think that we go into the Arsenal game with a good chance of winning? Let us know what you think. Do you agree with our lineups? Would you play someone else, play someone different formation maybe? Let us know. Get involved. While you're on YouTube as well, look up VanCam. You'll know about VanCam. We had VanCam's very own Kev Ashford on with us last week, in fact. Good to have him on. Hopefully we'll get him on again soon. If you want to see a more funny side of him, definitely look up VanCam on YouTube and subscribe to that. Thank you all for listening. We'll be back next week, hopefully celebrating a victory against Arsenal. So until then, goodbye.